Only one stone was needed to bring down Goliath. One perfect shot, one moment of faith, and the giant fell. So why, then, did David reach into the stream and choose 5? Was it fear? Was it doubt? Or was it something far deeper, something hidden that most people miss when they hear this story? David was no soldier. He was the youngest of his father's sons, a boy who watched sheep in the fields. That day, he wasn't even meant to fight. He was supposed to deliver bread to his brothers at the front line. But when he arrived, he heard the roar of a giant. Goliath, a warrior over 9 feet tall, stood mocking Israel's army, calling out for someone brave enough to face him. No one dared, not even the king. But David, the boy with a sling, stepped forward. And before he did, he knelt down by a quiet stream. He picked up not 1, not 2, but 5 smooth stones, and with them he walked out to face a monster. This is not just a detail for Sunday school. This is a secret about faith, preparation, and the battles you cannot see yet.
David's first trial wasn't Goliath's towering frame or the roar of the Philistine army. His first real battle came before he ever stepped into the valley. It happened when King Saul, Israel's tallest and strongest warrior, tried to dress him in armor. Picture the scene. The king's tent was crowded with anxious soldiers. Outside, Goliath's taunts still echoed across the valley floor. Saul, desperate for a champion, looked at this shepherd boy and thought, if he's going to fight, at least let him wear my armor. The king's attendants rushed forward, fastening a heavy bronze helmet on David's head. They strapped a breastplate of metal over his chest. They tightened straps, buckles, and plates until David looked more like a soldier than a shepherd. But the moment David tried to walk, the truth became clear. The armor weighed him down. The helmet slipped into his eyes. The sword felt foreign in his hand, long and unbalanced. He took a step, then another, but his movements were clumsy, unnatural. He staggered, as though he was carrying someone else's burden. This was trial number 1, the temptation to fight in someone else's way. Saul's armor represented the world's idea of strength: bronze, iron, steel. To every man in that tent, real warriors wore heavy armor and carried sharp blades. Without them, you weren't a soldier at all. But David knew better. He had not trained in Saul's armor. He had not spent years learning the swing of a sword. He had learned to fight with the tools of a shepherd: a sling, a staff, and his own courage. Imagine the pressure. Around him stood seasoned fighters, men who had marched in battle lines, who had trained for years. They must have whispered to each other, "What kind of fool goes against a giant with no armor?" Even Saul himself urged him, "If you are to fight, you must take this." The weight of their expectations pressed as heavy as the armor itself. Haven't you felt that in your own life? People hand you their armor, their way of doing things, their strategies, their fears, and expect you to wear them. They say, "You have to do it like this. This is the only way it works." Maybe you felt that at work, when you were told to copy the habits of someone else instead of trusting your own skills. Maybe you felt it in school, when you were measured by a test that didn't reflect your real strengths. Or maybe you felt it in family, when expectations weighed you down like a helmet too big for your head. David faced that same pressure. But instead of forcing himself to be something he wasn't, he made a bold choice. He began unfastening the straps. He pulled off the bronze helmet. He laid down the sword. And in front of the king himself, he declared, "I cannot go in these because I am not used to them." He returned the armor and walked away, lighter but freer. It takes courage to reject someone else's armor. It takes wisdom to say, "This is not how I was made to fight." Because here's the truth. If David had worn Saul's armor, he likely would have lost. He would have walked into battle weighed down, unsteady, slow. Goliath would have crushed him before he ever had the chance to sling a stone. The very thing meant to protect him would have destroyed him. That's the lesson of Trial 1. You cannot win your battles using someone else's weapons. You cannot live your life trying to fit into someone else's mold. The armor that works for another may suffocate you. The path that strengthens one person may weaken another. True strength comes when you fight with the gifts that are truly yours. David's decision to set aside Saul's armor wasn't just practical, it was spiritual. It was a declaration that his trust wasn't in bronze or iron, but in the God who had delivered him from the lion and the bear. His past victories had come not because he borrowed someone else's tools, but because he trusted what he had been given. He would step onto the battlefield not in Saul's shadow, but in his own light. Think of this in modern terms. Maybe your armor is the career path others chose for you. Maybe it's the lifestyle you were told was the only route to success. Maybe it's the pressure to look, act, or think like everyone else just to be taken seriously. Like David, you might find that the moment you put on that armor, you stumble. You feel unnatural. You feel crushed under the weight of expectations. And like David, you may need to lay it down. David teaches us this. Preparation doesn't mean pretending to be someone else. Preparation means trusting the skills you've honed in the quiet, hidden places. For him, it was the sling he used on the hillside, protecting sheep from predators when no one was watching. That was his weapon. That was his strength. That was enough. So David took off the armor, picked up his sling, and walked to the stream. His first victory was not striking down Goliath. It was the courage to say no to Saul's armor. His first battle was against the weight of expectation, and by laying it down, he became free to fight the giant in his own way.
David's second trial was not steel or stone. It was words, sharp, mocking, biting words. Sometimes the voice of ridicule can wound deeper than any sword. As David stepped out from Israel's camp and walked into the open, the laughter began. His own brothers were the first to scorn him. "Why have you come down here?" they sneered. "With whom did you leave those few sheep in the wilderness? We know your pride and your insolence." They belittled him, not just as a boy, but as someone unworthy even of responsibility. To them, he wasn't a warrior. He wasn't even a proper shepherd. He was a nuisance, a dreamer, a child who should have stayed home. Then came the soldiers. Hardened men with years of battle experience looked at him and whispered, "Is this our champion? This boy with no armor, no sword, no scars?" Their chuckles rippled through the crowd like wind through dry grass. To them, David's courage was comedy. His faith looked like foolishness. But the greatest ridicule of all came from Goliath himself. When the giant finally saw David approach with a sling in hand, his voice roared across the valley, "Am I a dog that you come to me with sticks?" He cursed David by his gods. He mocked his youth, his size, his weapons, and the Philistine army roared with laughter behind him. Thousands of voices joined together in one thunderous echo of contempt. This was trial number 2, the crushing weight of ridicule. Before David ever released a stone, he had to stand beneath the sound of laughter. He had to face the voice that said, "You are too small, too weak, too foolish to even try." Ridicule is a powerful weapon. Unlike a sword, it doesn't cut flesh, it cuts courage. It attacks the heart. It tells you that you don't belong, that your efforts are pointless, that everyone can see how unfit you are. And often, people fall before they ever fight, crushed not by the enemy's strength, but by the echo of mocking voices in their head. Haven't you felt that? The moment you dared to step out, someone laughed. The moment you tried something new, someone called you foolish. The moment you chased a dream, someone told you to sit down and be realistic. The laughter may not have been in a valley of armies, but it was just as loud in your soul. Ridicule is universal. Every great act faces it. The danger of ridicule is that it plants doubt. It makes you question not just your actions, but your identity.
Maybe they're right. Maybe I am too small. Maybe I don't belong here. Doubt is the seed ridicule wants to plant, and if you water it, it will grow until your courage withers away. David, however, did not let ridicule take root. His answer to the laughter was not anger. It was faith. When Goliath mocked him, David replied, "You come against me with sword and spear, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty." Notice what he did there. He did not fight ridicule with more ridicule. He fought it with identity. He rooted himself not in the opinions of men, but in the calling of God. This is the secret to overcoming ridicule. You cannot silence every mocking voice, but you can decide which voice you listen to. David chose to hear not the laughter of soldiers or the curses of a giant, but the steady assurance of a God who had delivered him before and would deliver him again. The same God who gave him strength against lions and bears would not abandon him now. There is another hidden layer here. Ridicule often comes before breakthrough. When people laugh, it usually means you are standing in a place no one else has dared to stand. They laugh because your courage exposes their fear. They mock because your faith reveals their lack of it. Goliath mocked David because deep down he couldn't believe that anyone would dare to oppose him. The ridicule was not proof of David's weakness, it was proof of his opponent's insecurity. Think about this. Every innovator, every dreamer, every person who stepped into new territory was laughed at first. Noah building an ark, Wright brothers building a flying machine, Mandela standing for freedom in a divided land. Laughter was their first trial. But those who endure ridicule often stand longest because they are fueled by something deeper than applause. David teaches us here that the sound of laughter does not define you. Your brothers may doubt you, your peers may mock you, your enemies may curse you. But their voices are not the final word. The real battle is not against their ridicule, but against your own heart's temptation to believe it. So David walked on, steady beneath the roar of mockery. His eyes did not turn back to the camp where his brothers sneered. His ears did not linger on the thunder of Philistine laughter. His heart did not bow to the curses of Goliath. He chose to root himself in faith. That choice, that defiance of ridicule, was as great a victory as the stone he later slung. The lesson of trial 2 is this: ridicule only has the power you give it. Mockery is loud, but it is hollow. Doubt may shout, but faith whispers more powerfully. David stood under laughter and chose not to bend. And in doing so, he proved that sometimes the greatest strength is not found in the silence of the crowd, but in the still voice you choose to believe within. When most people hear the story of David and Goliath, they imagine a single duel, one boy against one giant. But Scripture gives us a clue that changes everything. Goliath was not an only child. He had 4 brothers, giants like him. Some were as fearsome, some perhaps even taller. They were alive, waiting, watching. And in the moment David bent down to pick up stones from the stream, he wasn't just thinking about Goliath. He was thinking about them too. This is challenge number 3, the battle beyond the battle. Because sometimes the challenge standing in front of you is not the only one you'll face. Sometimes defeating today's giant is just the beginning. Giants often come in families. Problems rarely arrive alone. Think about it. How many times in life have you faced one challenge, only to find another waiting right behind it? You solve the financial crisis, and suddenly a health crisis begins. You overcome rejection, and criticism follows. You reach a success, and envy shadows it. Life rarely hands you a single giant to fight. Giants travel in packs. David understood this. He was young, but he was wise. He knew that killing Goliath might not end the battle. It might spark a new one. If Goliath fell, what would stop his brothers from storming the field in vengeance? What if defeating one giant only drew out 4 more? So David picked up 5 stones, not because he doubted God's power, but because he respected the possibility of future battles. This foresight is what separates the unprepared from the victorious. Many people walk into life's valleys with just enough to face what they see, but when the next problem rises, they are caught empty-handed. David chose differently. He prepared not only for the visible enemy, but for the invisible ones. His pouch carried more than the minimum. It carried readiness. Pause here for a moment. What are the brothers of Goliath in your life? Maybe the first giant is debt. You sling a stone and the balance falls. But waiting behind it are giants of poor habits, rising expenses, or unexpected emergencies. Maybe the first giant is conflict with one person, but behind it wait more voices, more critics, more challenges. If you only prepare for the one in front of you, the others will overwhelm you. But if you prepare with extra stones, wisdom, patience, resilience, you are not shaken when the shadows move. This challenge is not about fear. It is about foresight. Fear would have made David run. Foresight made him gather more. Fear shrinks your preparation. Wisdom expands it. By choosing 5 stones, David wasn't doubting God's deliverance. He was honoring God by being ready for whatever came next. Let's make this practical. Imagine a soldier carrying only 1 arrow into battle. Foolish, isn't it? Or a builder bringing only 1 tool to a construction site. Or a parent preparing only for their child's first year with no thought for the years to come. Victory is not just about one fight. It is about endurance through many. David's extra stones whisper a lesson across the centuries. Prepare beyond what you see. Your battle today may be loneliness, but tomorrow it may be temptation. Your battle today may be anger, but tomorrow it may be despair. Your battle today may be doubt, but tomorrow it may be pride. Each giant has brothers. Each problem has companions. Each victory invites a new test. There's also another layer here. By picking up 5 stones, David demonstrated faith with foresight. He didn't know if the battle would end with 1 throw or 5. He didn't know if Goliath's brothers would rise or stay hidden, but he refused to be caught unready. Faith is not just believing in the moment, it is preparing for the unknown. This is where many people stumble. They have faith for one fight, but not for the long war. They pray for today's need, but not for tomorrow's. They prepare for a single challenge, but not for the series that follow. David's pouch was a symbol of a heart that trusted God enough to think beyond the moment. And notice, he didn't grab a pile of stones more than he could carry. He chose a number, 5. Enough for what might come, but not excessive. This balance teaches us something too. Preparation should be intentional, not panicked. It's not about hoarding. It's about readiness. It's about trusting God for strength while also respecting the reality of multiple battles. So challenge 3 was the unseen threat of future giants. David overcame it by foresight, by refusing to let one victory blind him to the possibility of more challenges. He bent down at the stream, lifted 5 smooth stones, and silently declared, "I am ready." Not just for this fight, but for the ones that may follow. That moment of preparation was just as powerful as the moment of triumph. Because anyone can fight what they see, few prepare for what they cannot see. And that, more than anything, set David apart.
The 4th trial David faced was not Goliath's size, nor the laughter of the crowd, nor even the threat of hidden giants. His final and most terrifying trial was time itself. He had only 1 chance, 1 throw, 1 shot. If he missed, the battle would end in seconds. Think about the pressure of that. A sling was not a toy. It was a deadly weapon in the hands of someone trained. Archaeologists tell us that a skilled slinger could hurl a stone at speeds over 100 miles per hour. That's faster than a baseball pitch, faster than a professional tennis serve. At close range, such a stone could shatter bones, pierce armor, or even kill. But the sling also required precision. One mistake, one slip of the wrist, 1 ounce of hesitation, and the stone would miss its mark. Against a man like Goliath, there would be no second try. This is trial number 4, the crushing pressure of the moment when failure is final. It is the weight of knowing that everything depends on a single act, a single word, a single decision. It is the fear that freezes hands, that quickens the heart, that clouds the mind. Many strong men have failed, not because they lacked skill, but because the pressure broke them before the fight did. David, however, did not freeze. He did not tremble. He did not hesitate. Why? Because he had already fought this battle many times in secret. Long before this valley, David had trained with his sling in the quiet hills of Bethlehem. He had used it against wild animals, lions and bears that tried to snatch sheep from his flock. When others were asleep, he practiced. When no one was watching, he trained. He knew the feel of the leather in his hand, the weight of a smooth stone, the rhythm of his arm as he swung the sling. By the time he faced Goliath, the action was not strange to him. It was second nature. This is the hidden truth. Public victories are built on private disciplines. The crowd saw a boy who seemed foolish to challenge a giant. What they did not see were the countless hours he had spent mastering his craft when no one cared. They saw a single stone, but David saw a lifetime of preparation leading to that moment. Think of it this way. An Olympic runner doesn't become fast the day of the race. A musician doesn't become skilled the moment of the concert. A surgeon doesn't gain precision on the day of the operation. Each of them trains for years in hidden places so that when the pressure comes, their bodies and minds respond with confidence. David was no different. The sling was not his weakness, it was his strength, sharpened by long discipline. And this brings us to a deeper lesson. When pressure comes, you don't rise to the occasion. You fall back on your preparation. The man who hasn't practiced will falter. The one who hasn't trained will choke. But the one who has labored in silence will find that his hands move steady even when the world shakes. David's calm in the valley was not magic, it was mastery. This is why the pressure of one chance, though terrifying, did not crush him. He had already faced it in smaller ways. Every time he defended his flock, every time he took careful aim at a predator, every time he learned to trust his God in danger, he was preparing for this moment. When the eyes of nations were upon him, he did what he had always done. He swung the sling, steady and true. Now, think about your own life. What is your one-chance moment? Maybe it's a single opportunity to speak truth when everyone else is silent. Maybe it's the one job interview that could change your career. Maybe it's the one relationship where your words could heal or wound. The pressure feels unbearable, but the real question is, have you trained in the hidden places? Have you built disciplines when no one was watching so that when the spotlight comes, you are ready? David's story tells us this: greatness is not made in the valley, it is revealed there. The valley only shows what was built in the hillside, in the long nights, in the quiet faithfulness of a shepherd boy who practiced with his sling. So trial 4 was the weight of a single chance, and David overcame it not by sudden bravery, but by steady preparation. When others would have faltered under pressure, he stood calm, because for him, the valley was not new. It was simply another hillside, another predator, another target. The only difference was that now the world was watching. And that, perhaps, is the greatest lesson of all. When the pressure of one chance comes, you cannot pretend, you cannot fake discipline. You can only reveal what you have built. David's hand was steady because his heart had been steady long before. The sling was true because his trust had been true long before. The pressure did not break him because he was already ready.
The valley grew silent. Dust hung in the air. The laughter that had rolled from the Philistine camp only moments before slowed to a hush, as though even their mocking voices realized something unusual was about to happen. One boy, armed with nothing more than a sling, walked steadily toward a giant. Every step David took was a step into history. The clash of two nations rested on his shoulders. Behind him, the Israelites trembled, wondering if the shepherd would be their deliverer or their shame. Before him, Goliath loomed, a tower of iron and flesh. His armor gleamed in the sunlight, bronze scales covering him like an impenetrable wall. His spear was as thick as a weaver's beam, its iron tip weighing more than most men's swords. His shield-bearer stood ready, blocking David's path with layers of defense. Goliath's voice thundered once more, echoing through the valley walls. "Come here, boy, and I will give your flesh to the birds of the air and the beasts of the field." His words were meant to crush David's spirit before the fight began. His threats were not only against David, but against Israel's God. He mocked the Lord as much as he mocked the boy. But David's reply cut through the tension like a blade. "You come against me with sword and spear and javelin," he declared, his young voice carrying across the battlefield. "But I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hands, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel." These words were not just defiance, they were prophecy. David was not fighting for personal glory. He was fighting for God's honor, and that gave him a confidence no armor or weapon could supply. Now the tension reached its highest point. Goliath began to advance, his massive legs pounding the ground, shaking the earth with each stride. Dust rose around him. His shadow swallowed David's form. In human terms, the battle was already decided. One was giant, the other a boy. One had armor and weapons, the other had a sling. One had years of experience in blood and war, the other had years of silence on lonely hills. The contrast was absurd. But faith thrives in the absurd. Faith shines brightest when odds are darkest. David did not retreat. He did not wait for the giant to close the distance. He ran forward, closing the gap with fearless energy. His hand reached into his pouch. His fingers closed around a stone, smooth and cool against his skin. He placed it in the leather sling, and in one motion he began to spin. The sound cut through the air, a sharp, rising whistle as the sling blurred in circles. Time seemed to slow. Soldiers on both sides held their breath. The sun flashed on bronze armor. The giant's roar grew louder, closer. The boy's sling spun faster, steadier. Then, in a moment that changed history, David released. The stone flew like lightning. It whistled through the air with deadly precision, guided not by chance, but by years of hidden practice and by the hand of God himself. It struck the one vulnerable spot, the giant's helmet, just beneath the helmet's rim. The stone sunk deep, and the giant's roar stopped mid-breath. His eyes widened, his legs staggered, and then with a thunder that shook the valley floor, Goliath fell face down into the dust. Silence. Pure, stunned silence. The Philistines gasped in disbelief. The Israelites blinked in shock. The world seemed to freeze as the impossible became reality. The giant was down. In that instant, the balance of power shifted. The Philistines saw their champion destroyed by a boy. The Israelites saw their fear dissolve before their eyes. And David, the shepherd, stood over a fallen warrior who had terrified nations. This was the peak of the story. But the true victory was not just the fall of Goliath, it was what the fall represented. It proved that giants can fall. It proved that courage rooted in faith can overturn the odds. It proved that preparation and silence can lead to triumph in the spotlight. And perhaps most importantly, it proved that one stone, chosen in faith, can change the course of history.
The giant lay face down in the dust. His armor glimmered under the sun, his massive frame unmoving. For a moment, time stood still. No one on either side could quite believe what they had seen. A boy with no armor, no sword, no shield, had brought down the carer of Israel with a single stone. But David knew the battle was not yet over. A fallen giant is not always a dead giant. In the silence that followed, he ran forward, his feet kicking up dust as he closed the distance. He climbed onto the massive body, drew the enormous sword from Goliath's own side, and with one swing, he cut off the giant's head. The victory was complete, undeniable. When the Philistines saw their champion dead, fear rippled through their ranks. Their courage vanished. They turned and fled. The Israelites, who only minutes earlier had trembled in fear, now surged forward with shouts of triumph, chasing their enemies as far as the gates of Ekron. One boy's faith had changed the tide of a nation's battle. But here is the heart of the resolution. David had carried 5 stones, and he had used only 1. Some people say the other 4 were unnecessary. But were they? Not at all. They carried meaning that reached far beyond that valley. The first stone, the one that struck Goliath, was for the present battle. It represented courage for the challenge right in front of him. But the other 4 were not wasted. They represented preparation for the future. Goliath's 4 brothers were still alive. David's choice to carry 5 stones showed he was not thinking only of this fight. He was thinking beyond it. He was ready for the battles that might come next. This is where the wisdom lies. Many of us prepare only for the problem we can see. We save just enough money for one emergency. We train just enough for one task. We pray just enough for one trial. And when the next challenge arises, we are caught unready. But David teaches us to think differently. He teaches us to live with foresight, to bend down at the stream and gather not just one stone, but enough to face the battles that might appear when the dust settles. Carrying 5 stones was not a sign of doubt. It was a sign of wisdom. It did not mean David thought God might fail. It meant David understood life rarely sends one giant alone. Victories attract opposition. Success invites new trials. Defeating one problem often awakens others. By carrying extra stones, David declared, "I will not be surprised. I will not be caught off guard. I will be ready." Think about what that means for your life. Maybe your stone today is the courage to face fear. But do you also carry the stone of patience for tomorrow's discouragement? Maybe your stone today is faith to step into the unknown. But do you also carry the stone of resilience for the setbacks that will surely come? Maybe your stone today is wisdom to make one right decision. But do you also carry the stone of perseverance to keep walking when the road grows long? David's victory teaches us that true strength is not just in winning a single moment. It is in preparing for a lifetime of battles. The other 4 stones in his pouch never left his hand that day, but they still preached a sermon. They whispered, "Be ready, be wise, think ahead." The resolution of this story is not simply that a boy killed a giant.
It is that a boy understood something about life and faith that many adults forget. Faith is not reckless. Faith is not careless. Faith does not step into the valley with one stone and hope for the best. Faith bends down at the stream, gathers more than enough, and trusts that God will guide each one when the time comes. David's 5 stones remind us that courage and preparation walk hand in hand. One without the other is incomplete. He carried 5, but used 1. And that is the secret. The victory was not in the stone itself, but in the readiness of the heart that carried it.
So why did David pick 5 stones when only 1 was needed? At the beginning, it looked like a detail too small to matter. Just a shepherd boy bending by a stream, gathering smooth rocks into his pouch. But now, after the dust is settled and the giant has fallen, we see the truth. The number was never random. It was a message. It was wisdom hidden in plain sight. The echo of this story speaks to every one of us. Life is not about the one stone you throw today. It is about the stones you carry for tomorrow. David understood that giants rarely come alone. He knew victory over one does not guarantee peace forever, and so he carried more, not because he doubted God's strength, but because he respected life's reality. Faith does not blind you to future battles. Faith prepares you for them. Think about your own giants. Perhaps today you face one overwhelming challenge, a Goliath of debt, fear, illness, or conflict. You bend down, pick up your stone, and with courage, you take your shot. And maybe, like David, you watch your giant fall. But then what? Do you stop there, celebrating one victory? Or do you prepare for the giants that still linger in the shadows? The echo of David's choice tells us, carry extra stones. Carry patience for the moments when the fight drags on. Carry wisdom for the decisions that come after success. Carry resilience for the days when the shadows grow longer, not shorter. Carry love, the strongest weapon of all, to protect not just yourself, but those who walk beside you. David's pouch was small, yet it carried more than enough. In the same way, you don't need endless resources to face life. You don't need every answer, every skill, every weapon. What you need is the wisdom to prepare. A handful of virtues, a pocket full of disciplines, a heart full of faith, that is enough. And notice something else. David did not hoard dozens of stones. He chose 5. Not 1, not 10, but 5. Enough to face more than one battle, but not so many that he was weighed down. This balance is part of the echo, too. Preparation should not paralyze you. Fear gathers too many stones, loading itself with burdens it may never use. Wisdom gathers just enough, trusting God for the rest. This echo also reminds us that the story is not only about David, it is about us. Every generation faces its giants. Voices of ridicule, weights of expectation, shadows of future battles, the pressure of one chance. And every generation must decide how many stones to carry. Too few, and we are unready. Too many, and we are trapped by fear. The echo of David's story calls to us to be ready but not burdened, to be wise but not anxious, to trust but also to prepare. Let me tell you a modern picture of this. Imagine a young woman starting her career. Her giant might be inexperience, the doubt of others who don't believe in her. She faces it bravely, proves herself, and wins that battle. But if she carries no extra stones, if she doesn't prepare for the next giant of exhaustion, or the next giant of temptation, or the next giant of opportunity, she may be crushed when they come. But if she has gathered patience, resilience, and integrity along the way, she is ready not only for her first victory, but for the many that follow. Or imagine a man fighting addiction. His first giant may fall and he feels free. But if he hasn't prepared for the giant of loneliness, or the giant of old friends pulling him back, or the giant of despair when temptation whispers again, his victory may be short. The wisdom of David whispers to him too. Carry 5 stones. Be ready not just for one fight, but for the many that life will bring. This is the echo that makes the story timeless. The shepherd boy's handful of stones teaches us that true courage is not careless, and true faith is not blind. It is not reckless to prepare. It is not weak to be ready. It is wisdom. So why 5 stones? Because victory is never just about the giant in front of you. It is about the giants waiting in the shadows. David teaches us that life is not about surviving one moment, but about standing ready for the many that follow. His echo calls to you and me, bend down at the stream, gather your stones, and carry them with you. You may not need them all today, but tomorrow you'll be glad you have them.
And so, the story of David and his 5 stones comes to an end. 1 stone was enough to bring down the giant, but the other 4 remind us of something greater, that wisdom prepares for tomorrow, even while courage faces today. When you walk into your own valleys, remember this: the strength to win does not come from what you borrow from others, but from what you've been faithful to build in the quiet places. It does not come from silencing every voice of ridicule, but from listening to the one true voice that calls you forward. It does not come from pretending life will give you only one battle, but from preparing for the many that will surely come. So the question now is not just what giant stands before you, but what stones are you carrying? Are you ready for the shadows still waiting? Tell us in the comments, which stone do you need most in your life right now? Courage, patience, wisdom, resilience, or love? And don't forget to subscribe for more timeless lessons hidden inside the stories you thought you already knew. Carry your stones well. The battles may come, but so will the victories.